Welcome to Scaling Up H2O, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. The podcast where we've been doing that for 4 years. The podcast where we've been doing that for 200 episodes. Folks, my name is Trace Blackmore. I get the incredible honor of hosting this podcast, and you heard it. It is episode 200. Actually, if you are keeping track and if you have been a listener of the show since the beginning, you'll notice that we did some creative, probably some foolish things when we first started titling the shows and numbering the shows. For example, if I would go to an event, I would have the show number, and then each day would be a point 1, point 2, point 3. So if you really want to keep score, we are over 200 episodes. However, as we title episodes today, this episode is titled the 200th episode, and we all love a reason to celebrate. So we are going to celebrate the fact that we have 200 episodes of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. As I mentioned at the top of the show, just a few months back, we celebrated our 4th birthday. And I have to say, those two things together, the fact that we have 200 episodes, the fact that this show has been on for 4 years, is just blowing my mind. I cannot tell you how unprepared I was as a podcast host, as a person that makes content and sends it out on a regular basis, on a person that even understood what a podcast was when I started 4 years ago. But folks, people asked me to do it. I wanted to do it. Didn't exactly know what it was, but I didn't let that stop me. I learned on the fly what I needed to do to bring this show to you. And as I introduced or reintroduced on episode 190, I asked Sean, our incredible audio engineer, to play back episode 1. Oh my gosh, what an embarrassing moment. And no, Sean, we are not going to put that in this episode. If you want to listen to that, you are more than welcome to go back to episode 1, or you can go back to episode 190, where we already did that. And folks, I hope, if nothing else, what that proves is that you can do anything that you want to do. And it's not going to be pretty the first time that you do it. The important part is you take that first step. That first step leads to a second step, which leads to a third step. And I hope everybody out there in the Scaling Up Nation will agree that episode 200 is miles better than episode 1. But you have to start with 1. I hope you use that as motivation. I know I listen back at that, and it's so difficult. At one time, I couldn't even listen to it. And again, good friend of mine, Charlie Cicchetti, he's been on the show numerous times. He was one of my first guests. He was on episode 4. He's been on throughout the last 200 episodes. Charlie said, go back and listen to your first episode after you do 20. He said, don't listen to it before you do 20. And I did that, and it was painful. I think I did it again after I did 50. It was still painful. I did it again after I listened to 100, still painful. And folks, today at 200, it is still painful, but I realized that you always have to start somewhere, and that was my starting point. And there we go. So I'm learning how to celebrate that. And I hope that that motivates you to whatever you want to start, get started. Because if it wasn't for that very first episode, I would not have discovered that I have a passion for this podcast. I bring up my dad a whole bunch on Scaling Up H2O. My dad was the one that introduced me into water treatment. He taught me what he knew about water treatment. He encouraged me to always become better. He instilled in me to never be satisfied with what I knew today, but always realize that what I knew today was a starting point of what I needed to learn tomorrow. And I know you've heard this on the show before, but he told me that whenever I thought I learned everything about this industry was the day I needed to quit because that was impossible. And that meant I was complacent and I wasn't learning anymore. Folks, congratulations, you're an industrial water treater, and that means you're in a job that has endless learning. You should never be bored. You should never feel that you have reached a plateau. And if you have, I'm here to tell you, you're not trying hard enough. Please do not fall in that day-to-day rut that you wash, rinse, repeat. There's always something else to learn. There's always something to get better at. And when you do that on a regular basis, there is no better industry to be a part of. I just said that this podcast has become a passion of mine. I had no idea I was going to enjoy a podcast. I had no idea that it was going to become a part of my life. And I had no idea what this podcast was going to mean to so many other people. Folks, I have met so many incredible people because I own this microphone and I put this podcast out called Scaling Up H2O from Atlanta, Georgia. I've met people all over the world, and I've had people come up to me in tears because of something they realized, something they did because they listened to this podcast. Now, I am always very leery to take credit where somebody says they did something because of me or something that I said. Folks, that was always inside you. Maybe I sparked something that got you to act on it, but that's all I did. And I'm happy I can help, but the credit all goes to you. And thank you so much for all the people that have come up to me, either at a conference, a convention, they've sent me an email, they've sent me a voicemail, they've carrier pigeon. No, I haven't gotten any carrier pigeons, but so many people have reached out to me to say what this podcast has meant to them, things that they've been able to do because they've been inspired by the podcast. And I have to tell you, some days there's a lot going on and it's very difficult to get motivated to stop what I'm doing and get the material I need so I can release each and every week. And what gets me going to that, what motivates me to that is when you share those stories with me. I will say the biggest thing that this podcast has created is community. And of course, you all know that you are the Scaling Up Nation, and there are so many nation members now. So many people, like I said, that are coming up to me, and I just think that's fantastic. And I know it's fantastic because I know what it's like to be out there driving from account to account, and it's just you, and it's a lonely job. And then you go and you talk to a customer, and maybe you get to see that customer, or maybe you're just alone in the mechanical room doing what you need to do to make sure that customer is taken care of. Folks, I realize it's lonely, and my hope was this podcast was going to be your onboard companion as you're going from account to account. And then, as you had a companion in the car, it was going to motivate you to learn new things, to do new things, to look at things a little bit differently. And I know through your words to me that that has definitely happened. Now, about a month or so ago, I started asking in the podcast for people to let me know, members of the Scaling Up Nation, to let me know how this podcast has affected you. What does it mean to you? I just finished telling you what it means to me, and I can probably go on another hour about talking about how much this podcast means to me. But I really want to celebrate you, the Scaling Up Nation. And I've asked, what has the past 200 episodes meant to you? Several people have sent in voicemails. Now, how do they do that? They went to scalinguph2o.com. There's a pop-up that says leave voicemail. You can use your computer microphone. You can use your mobile device. You can leave me a voicemail. I personally listen to each and every one of those voicemails, and I've selected a few that we are going to play here today. So let's go ahead and get started.
Hey, Trace and Scaling Up H2O Nation. This is Reed Hutchison, and just wanted to call in and share what this podcast has meant to me over the last 4 years. This podcast, and Trace as the host, has encouraged me with 3 really important lessons over the years. The first is that my work matters. When I started listening in 2017 as a young professional in the water treatment industry, they were difficult days. And on a hard day, it was natural to ask the question, is this really worth it? And the show and Trace on it have encouraged me that this work really does matter. It has an impact. And so I should stick with it and continue to work. Secondly, I heard from the show that we can get better. And I have appreciated the encouragement from Trace and the podcast that there's always room for improvement, and that not only as I get better, we can all get better together. And there's a rising tide when one person decides to grow and improve. And lastly, I've appreciated this message has taught me that I am not alone and you are not alone. It's a big community out there, and just really appreciate Trace and the podcast for helping bring us together. I've grown so much over the last few years listening to this show as a professional and as a leader and as a member of this community. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next 200 episodes. Thanks, Trace, for all that you do.
Reed, thank you for that. Listening to that, I'm so humbled. I met Reed a couple of years ago. He told me that he learned about the AWT technical training from this podcast. And then I got to meet Reed. And Reed and I have worked together quite a bit. He's a member of the mastermind group. And I have to tell you, I am so impressed with what he is doing, with how he is increasing his game as a water treater. It's just really impressive to watch. Just another example of getting to meet so many people because of this podcast. But folks, we're not going to stop there. The next person we're going to hear from is somebody you hear from each and every week. And this is James McDonald. And of course, James McDonald is somebody that just does so much for not only the Scaling Up Nation, but the entire water treatment community. He, of course, contributes with James's Challenge each and every week. Don't worry, we're going to hear James's Challenge as we end the episode today. But here are a few words from James McDonald.
This is James McDonald, and as a self-proclaimed #1 superfan, I'd like to congratulate Scaling Up H2O and Trace on your 200th episode. Seems like you just crossed 100 yesterday, but time flies when you're having fun. Keep up the good work.
James, there's no doubt about it. Time has absolutely flown by doing this podcast. I look back and I can't believe it's 4 years. I can't believe it's 200 episodes. And I can't believe how large the Scaling Up Nation is, all the topics that we covered. And I'll tell you this is my fear, that I'm going to run out of topics. Now, I thought I was going to run out of topics at 20, and that didn't happen. I thought I was going to run out of topics at 50, and that didn't happen. Well, folks, we've made it to 200. I still have some ideas, but there is no way that we are going to make it to another 200 without your help. So please do what these fine people did. You can record your own voice asking me a question. Has there something weird that you've seen that you want an answer to? Is there a topic you want me to explore? You can record your voice. I will play it on the air and we will answer your question. Go to scalinguph2o.com and you can record that voicemail. If you don't feel like recording your voice, you can go to the show ideas page and you can list out what you want us to talk about. I cannot tell you how much that helps us out, and that will definitely help us get to the next 200. Let's go ahead and hear from another listener.
Hey, my name's Laith Charles. I'm reaching out to say how Scaling Up H2O has impacted me. I think it's been a great way to get to know some of the industry titans. You get experts on a wide variety of topics that are, adjacent or directly involved with the water treatment community. You can reach out to the people featured on the show, get to know them, ask them questions that may have not been covered during their interview. And it's just a good way to keep a strong pulse on prevailing trends in the water treatment community and refresh some of the fundamentals.
Well, Laith, I have to tell you, that was one of my intentions when we started the Scaling Up H2O podcast, that this was a conduit for you to meet people that do the same type of work that you do. You can meet people that are experts in the question that you have a question about. So I'm so happy to hear that that is exactly what it is doing for you. And let's go ahead and hear from Adam Seitz.
Hey, Trace and the Scaling Up Nation. This is Adam Seitz with CTI Water Treatment. Just wanted to check in as we approach the 200th episode and let you know some ways that the show has been able to help me. As an individual, the podcast acts as a constant reminder of the broad spectrum, the big and the small ways that we as water treatment professionals are able to be impactful. From something, the daily grind of running some tests and completing a service call, some client relations, all the way up to the big picture of environmental impact and business growth strategies. The podcast touches on different perspectives and areas of those things that keeps me focused and is always a good reminder. Another way the show helps is we can use it as a training tool. If my team is facing a specific situation or issue and there's a show that is discussed, that I can always reference that show and make that a learning opportunity for my team as well. And so for those reasons, I just want to extend my thanks and appreciation for yet another milestone reached.
Adam, thank you for that. You were one of the first people that called in to ask me a question, and I did an entire episode around your question. So you answered the call that I just asked the Scaling Up Nation before you came on. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for those kind words. I've heard from so many people in management or owners of water treatment companies that they have their team listen to episodes, and then on a regular basis, that will start dialogue and they will start training discussions based on different episodes. I hope that it would encourage, when I say it, this podcast would encourage learning on how we can become better water treaters. But when I hear stuff like that, when I hear that you're using this content and you are just making things better, you're making your people better, you're making the water treatment industry better, you're making customers respect our craft better, that is just incredible to me. Thank you for doing that. I know there's so many people out there that are doing that. In fact, there was somebody that came up to me at an AWT convention and he said, yes, my boss forces us to listen to every single one of your episodes, and then we talk about it. Now, hearing as the host that you're being forced to listen to the podcast, not sure what I thought about that, but I understand what you meant, just didn't like the choice of words. I love that people are using this to learn more. So again, Adam, thank you for doing that. Thank you for all those people that are raising the bar out there on all the knowledge that we know as water treaters, and you're trying to learn more each and every day. And you are being the example that our customers need to see, because let's face it, there are so many bad examples out there, and that's what a lot of people think of when they think of what a water treater is. So thank you, one water treater at a time, changing the minds of the people out there that this is a respected profession. This is a professional profession. This is something that if we do correctly, that we can really enhance how we use the equipment that we are treating. We can make sure that the equipment is using the least amount of power possible to operate. That means less resources are going into that equipment. And however you look at that, where it is as cheap as possible to run that equipment and that customer is getting the benefit, thereby more than paying for our water treatment program, or that we are not using valuable natural resources and creating a larger carbon footprint because we are running so efficient. Water treatment's got that covered. However you look at that. Also, water is a very finite commodity on our planet. We are using water like we have never used water in the history of this planet. We have the same amount of water today that we had so many years ago, but we're using it different. And the way we're using it, if we're not using it responsibly, we're not going to be able to continue to use it as we continue our futures. Now, I cannot think of another industry that has such an impact on how we use water and how much water we can save. If you're not keeping track of that, if you're not up on how much water you are saving your clients by optimizing your water treatment programs, doing everything that you do on a day-to-day basis correctly, you are missing a golden opportunity. And when you put water savings together with energy savings, folks, we as water treaters are the most inexpensive bill that our customer will ever pay. However, they're not going to get to that leap without you bringing them there. You are the most valuable vendor that they have. Please make sure they know it.
Hey Trace, good morning. Russ Baskin. Hope all is well. Listen, I wanted to give you some feedback that I got from myself and some of the guys. You know, scaling up has been really good for us, and I just wanted to let you know this is the place that we come to get industry insights, some news. We're always excited about find out what leaders are thinking and where our industry is really going. And the podcast has really helped us pinpoint those industry leaders. I also love that we can re-listen to episodes that matter most to us, and that's an individual thing. We at Tower Water use it as a way to feel connected to our industry, and we encourage all of our employees to listen to it. You know, really, there's no other tool like it out there for water treatment and for especially what we do. You know, we sometimes feel alone out there. And when we hear the podcast and scaling up, we know that we're on the right track. We know we're pushing in the right direction. So do me a favor, keep up the good work, and we'll keep listening and keep supporting you. So thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Well, Russ, thank you so much for that. Guys at Tower Water have been so supportive of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. I know they're one of the companies that listen on a regular basis, and they have conversations about it. And a lot of them have given me show ideas. Thank you so much for that. You know, something that Russ mentioned that I am so proud of is, let me back up. One of the things that we do as providing this podcast to you is we see what's working and what's not working. So we try to track analytics when we talk about something or when we do something new, just to see how well it is received by you, this Scaling Up Nation. And one of the things that is just incredible is the amount of episodes that you out there in the Scaling Up Nation share with each other. It is phenomenal. When I look at other podcasts and see what the norm is for how many shares they get of content, we're like 10 times over that. And that tells me a couple of things. One, that we're talking about the right things and you like what we're talking about. You find it informative and helpful. But two, you are sharing the knowledge. You are reaching out to people that you think could use that information, and you are sharing that episode. I want to thank all of you that have done that, that continue to do that. You know, that's how we're going to raise the bar in the water treatment industry. That's how we're going to find new Scaling Up H2O members. That's how we're going to find the topics that we don't know to talk about because we found a new listener that needs to hear something else on this show. So please keep doing that. Please keep sharing content. Please keep telling each other about this podcast. I am always shocked when I go somewhere and somebody has no idea that there is a podcast out there that they could be listening to and learning as they're driving to their accounts. So don't think everybody knows it, because they don't. And each water treater at a time where we can educate that there is this podcast, it makes us all better. And if all of us get better, that means the industry gets better. And folks, we all get rewarded when that happens. Well, let's listen to the last selection of all the voicemails that were submitted. And you've heard this guy before, so I'm not going to introduce him. Here he is.
Hello, Scaling Up Nation. This is Mark Lewis, the most requested guest on ScalingUpH2O.com. It's hard to believe we've been scaling up on knowledge for over 200 episodes, and we're thankful that the Scaling Up Nation continues to provide feedback, questions, topics that allow us to continue to scale up on our knowledge so that we don't scale up our customer systems. Thank you, Trace Blackmore. Thank you, Scaling Up Nation. From me and my heart, thanks.
Well, Mark, thank you. And Nation, you know, I have a special place in my heart for Mark Lewis. Mark Lewis is the story. I think it's the example of there's no need to be an island out there as an industrial water treater. Mark and I met working at AWT. And when I say working, I believe it was 2003. It was at the general session. Jay Farmery asked us to hand out the notes from the previous meeting. And he said, hey, Mark, Trace, meet each other, hand this stuff out. That's how Mark and I met. And then the following year, I think the convention was in Charlotte. Mark and I really got to know each other that year. And we have just been the best of friends ever since. And folks, I hope you have somebody out there that when you see something and you're just thinking, what the heck is going on here in this water treatment program, that you can reach out to. I'm so lucky that I have so many mentors, and Mark's one of those guys that I can just call on a regular basis, and he could say, you know what, I've seen that. This is exactly what's going on, or good luck with that. I have never seen that before in my life. Let me know how it turns out. I think I've gotten both of those answers depending on what the question was. But the fact is, I have people that I can talk to that instantly know what it is that I'm talking about. And I don't have to preface what it is that I do, how I do it, what a cooling tower is, what a boiler is, whatever type of water treatment that you're in. You don't have to say all of that. You can just go into what you need help with. And I think that's the Scaling Up Nation. I know that's Mark. I know that's so many of my mentors. It's my hope that this podcast has brought you that community, that this podcast has helped introduce you to people that do what you do. And I don't know if I would wish having a Mark in your life, but I do hope that you can find a friend, as I do in Mark Lewis, that I can share so much stuff with and get so much help from out there with water treatment questions. So there we have it. Thank you so much for all the people that called in. Let me know what this show has meant to them. And I know there's way more out there. I know that many of you wanted to call in, but you didn't get a chance to do that. I appreciate the thoughts that you send. And I hope that you do have some questions and you will eventually call in for that. 200 episodes. We made it without your question, but I'm here to tell you we're not going to make it to an additional 200 without you. And yes, I'm talking to you calling in and letting me know what your question, comment, concern, or guest you want me to talk to is. Well, Nation, a tradition this year is each and every episode, we are trying to make you a better water treater by trying something different each and every week. Of course, we call that James's Challenge. This week is going to be no different. So here's another installment of James's Challenge.
Hello, Scaling Up Nation. The next James's challenge as we grow as an industrial water treatment professional, drop by drop, is run a jar study on a wastewater sample, or learn how to do one. Many industrial water treatment professionals are strong in cooling and boiler systems, but may have little to no experience in industrial wastewater treatment. It's a different animal, can take patience, and can require a different way of thinking. It can even be intimidating. A good way to start is by finding an opportunity to do a jar test. That way you can see up close and personal what's really happening. At the very least, take this week to learn how to do one. Be sure to share your experience on LinkedIn by tagging it with hashtag JC21 and hashtag ScalingUpH2O. This is James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing what you share.
Nation, in celebration of our 200th episode, and also in celebration that this is our 25th James's Challenge, James McDonald created 5 bingo game cards that we are sharing with you, the Scaling Up Nation. Now you can play those on Facebook. So you need to go to our Scaling Up H2O Facebook page and spin the carousel of 5 unique bingo cards, and then select that card. You're going to play bingo, which means you're going to check off the ones that you have completed. And the first 5 people to complete that challenge, get that information to me. We are going to send you a Scaling Up H2O t-shirt. Nation, I want to thank you for celebrating 200 episodes with me. I want to thank you for listening, because I think so many people out there have started from episode 1 listening to 200 episodes of this voice. I have certainly been honored to be your host for Scaling Up H2O. I can't wait to bring you another 200 episodes. So for everybody out there that is part of the Scaling Up Nation, thank you for making Scaling Up H2O what it is today. Have a great week, folks. One of the things I hear so often about the Rising Tide Mastermind is about how well the members in the Rising Tide Mastermind listen to other people. Folks, we are programmed to give quick advice even if we don't have all the information. Through the issue-solving track that we practice in the Rising Tide Mastermind, you will learn how to ask better questions so you can give better advice, and that will shorten the road for whatever issue you're trying to solve. To find out more, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind.